I wanted to talk about relatability or unrelatability and special interests. So, special interests are a way that I try to connect with people. However, I have a hard time communicating that I relate to someone without them perceiving it as me being competitive or arrogant or a know it all. So I really struggle with that. And that is not my intention behind it. I'm not a competitive person at all. Um, I was never good at sports, so losing is something that I'm quite familiar with. I just don't see regular conversations as a competition. I think that competition should be reserved for times in which there are specific rules of competition, like during sports or, board games or like conversations that take place in an actual debate atmosphere or, courtrooms or whatever, that kind of thing. But not just everyday conversations. And so I really have struggled though, because it seems like a lot of people perceive like me telling a relatable experience as me trying to one up them. And so, one person that I know and, think that I can relate to fairly well, we have lots of experiences in common and have, gone to a lot of the same places. We listen to some of the same music. We've read a lot of the same books and just have, several experiences in common. That person told me that whenever I would share a relatable experience when they were talking about their experience, that it threw off the conversation for them. And he said he didn't know what way to steer the conversation after I did that. And he didn't specifically say this, but I saw this is the conclusion I jumped to. So he kind of saw it as me hijacking the conversation. So I wasn't trying to one up him or hijack the conversation. When he shared his experience that I could relate to, I just got really excited because it was like, oh yeah, I went there too. I went there this year and did this, and did you go here? And that kind of thing. Like, that's how I relate to people. And it's so infrequent that I can relate to people that whenever I can, I get really excited about it, and it may appear that I hijack the conversation. And he said, I made it about myself, and that wasn't my intent. Because I did ask some questions about his experience there, but I guess because I threw in my experience, that threw it off. And so it kind of hurt my feelings, but because I was, it kind of dulled the excitement that I had over relating to someone. But at the same time, I was glad, happy for the honesty for one thing. That's always refreshing. And I was glad that I found out about that because after that I did some research into it. And even though it's not like a rule, it's a preference. Some people prefer conversations to go the way I do, and some people prefer conversations to go the way he preferred. And so a lot of neurotypical people do seem to prefer that you not share your relatable experience with them. I can totally understand that in some cases, where if someone's telling you about a loved one that has passed away, it would probably be really bad to say, I know how you feel right now because my dog passed away a few years ago, where I know how strongly that I felt about my dogs and how much that affected me. A lot of neurotypical people would be insulted that I compared the loss of a dog to the loss of their family member or whatever. Even though for me, I have both to compare it to. I would say the loss of the dogs was worse. Judge me for that. I don't care. So, but that's, one example for which telling a relatable experience would be bad. But, when you're like telling, I went to this place and did this, and then you say, I went there too and did this, I don't quite see that being an actual, um, bad thing. It is just a matter of preference, but it is kind of an obstacle just one more obstacle in trying to relate to people. And, so another example would be like, I love A Song of Ice and Fire. And so when Game of Thrones was airing a few years ago, if anyone mentioned watching it, I was in on that conversation, whether I was invited or not. I just, was so obsessed, still am, with the whole George R. R. Martin's whole universe of everything. So if I heard someone talking about it, they may be a casual viewer, I would try to talk to them about it, get really excited because here's someone who's interested in something I'm interested in. And I just want to, exchange ideas with that person about, theories and all that. So where they might be a casual viewer, I was, I had read the books, then watched the show, then reread the books, then reread the books again in a different order according to point of view characters. And then I read all of the other books surrounding that and expanded to the Thousand Worlds universe and read all of his sci-fi and all of that. So where I had explored the entire multiverse of George R. R. Martin, they had, barely scraped the tip of the iceberg, but I was totally on board with discussing the tip of that iceberg with them. But they perceived it as one of those, as me being arrogant, like a know-it-all, like, let me tell you about how, like, all of the knowledge I have about this, and that was not my intent at all. I just was excited to have someone to talk about it with, and kind of ruined it for myself by making an ass of myself and, being overzealous, overexcited. So it just gets difficult sometimes to even talk about relatable experiences with people. And so I have lots of special interests that I would love to be able to discuss with people at the level of excitement that I genuinely feel without risk of judgment or someone thinking that I'm arrogant or that I'm trying to one-up them or compete with them or anything. I just like to be able to pour out my joy, my inner, all of the joy that I feel inside over all of these things that I love. And I don't have a chance to do that. So we're friends, right? We're acquaintances, I guess. So I'm gonna just spill it all. I'm gonna just tell you all about my special interests, and maybe somebody out there can relate to some of my special interests. I guess I'll start by saying I am a self-taught artist. I've never had an art class in my life, and I like doing realism. portraits, paintings, sketches, all kinds of stuff. And but realism, that is my special interest within art. Just very specifically, I like the details. I like going into the small details of things. And another special interest of mine is video games, and particularly RPG open world games. And so I will, like, especially Skyrim and The Witcher 3 and Assassin's Creed. Assassin's Creed Valhalla is my favorite, but and God of War, I love that. Anyway, and Horizon Zero Dawn. So I like taking characters from my video games and painting them and sketching them. So tying that in together, and like tying in all of my hobbies or special interests, like The Witcher 3 inspired me to buy all of the Witcher books and also draw The Witcher. And after I started watching the show The Witcher, I drew Ciri from the show. And so, like, one thing just inspires another, and they're all connected, but it's all basically fantasy world stuff, except for my paintings, which are realism and real stuff. But now, actually, not like video game characters, but they are realistic versions of the video game characters. So, yeah, that's one reason I don't really relate especially to other artists, because for one thing, if a person has spent years in art school, they may look down on someone who is self-taught. It seems like the times that I have talked to someone that was an art student, it was even obvious even to me, and I can't even pick up on things that much. It was obvious there was some condescension going on, that I was like, realism is looked down on a little bit because it's not as expressive as abstract, and also self-taught. I don't know anything about technique. I have my very own technique, and I don't even know what brushes are supposed to do what. I just use a brush that tends to, like, oh yeah, this does this thing, so I'll do this thing with this brush, and it could be the wrong brush according to experts. But what I do is just in my own style, and I like it that way because it's unique and authentic to me, even if it's authentically bad. I like that it is my signature style, even if it's flawed. That I'm fine with that. I'd just rather be unique than have learned somebody else's way of doing things and then kind of be like a copy of someone else. So I just basically create the shapes that I see on canvas and or paper, whatever. I just create the shapes, and I don't know anything about brush strokes or anything like that. But so I'll show you a few things that I've done. Behind me here is this is my grandfather's truck. It's unfinished. And over here, that was my Basset Hound, and that was my Silky Terrier. And I had those two dogs for a total of 20 years. And these were the two first pet portraits that I did. And I have done a few pet portraits for people, and I gave them away because I have a hard time selling paintings to people that I know. And so I usually give them away as gifts. So, and strangely enough, the only things that I sold were kid portraits, which I'll never do again, and abstract, which is really weird because I'm not an abstract artist. I just paint pretty colors. So, yeah. And behind me, these are bananas. This is the first time I've ever painted fruit. I was like, most people start out with fruit. So I guess I'm learning in reverse or something. And so I will frequently find pictures on Pinterest that I like, the colors, and I don't have like a photographer to reference or anything like that to give them credit, but this was a picture, or based on a picture that I found on Pinterest, and I really loved the patina on the metal and trying to capture the shine and just make the metal look like metal. And that's another one of my special interests, metal. I love symphonic metal and melodic death metal, and mostly bands from Finland. I also love Ghost, which most people would say they're not metal, but some people say they are. But yeah. And so that also makes me a little less relatable to people my age, especially females of my age, because I'm like, I love video games and reading fantasy fiction, and metal. And I don't have kids. So, yeah. Anyway, and this is a Knucklehead Harley picture that I found on Pinterest, and it's not quite finished, but it's close enough. Over here, let's see. It's a wave, another Pinterest picture that I found, and it's not finished either. Now these are finished. My Converse. I love details, so I liked doing the little details in the shoestrings on that. I guess I'll straighten that later. It'll bug me if I don't. Okay, yeah, that's gonna take some work. These, those two pair. I retired, but I love Converse. That is kind of my apparel special interest. I love Converse so much. They are perfect for my narrow little feet. And I want a pair in every color, and I have several pairs, but not one in every color. And so here is, that was my breakfast one morning, and that was my cupcake for one birthday, a sad birthday. And here's some gummy bears. Uh-oh, gummy bears. And I did those for St. Patty's Day. And this is a rat rod truck that I saw. I took the photo based on that one, that one's based on. Saw that truck in Las Vegas. I hate Las Vegas. And in the future, I'm going to do a video about places that are sensory hell. And Las Vegas is going to be at the top of that list. It is the absolute worst. Yeah, it's terrible, awful. But the rat rod place was kind of cool. And here's Geralt of Rivia. This notepad, drawing pad is kind of floppy, so I'm a Hobbit girl, so I made myself a little Hobbit sign with all the Hobbit meals on it. I don't adhere to the Hobbit 7 meal a day diet, but I do graze, and so probably 7 times a day. And here's a donut that I painted. It is entitled Regret, because my friend told me that for him, sex is like a donut. You crave the donut, you get the donut, and the donut is good for about like the minute that you're eating it. And then you feel bad after you eat the donut and you regret the donut. So that is the donut painting is inspired by that insightful story. And here's Farkas from Skyrim. I really liked doing the armor and getting those little details in the metal, even though I didn't have a very detailed picture. I tried to just make him look a little more realistic. And here's Vilkas because I can't separate the twins. And so I just tried to make a slightly more realistic version of them and their armor because I don't run mods. I'm a traditionalist, but I just thought I'd give them a glow up. And here is my bookshelf. More books down there. Robin Hobb, all on the top. And oh my gosh, it's almost all fantasy fiction. I've got a few environmental books like Collapse by Jared Diamond and Guns, Germs, and Steel. And some history on there as well. Yeah, so that is, but fantasy fiction is pretty much all that I read. That is, like, everything else is just, it pales in comparison. And I just absolutely love my fantasy fiction. And here is Ciri from the Witcher TV series. And that was my original drawing. And I also have random drawings just laying all over the place. Like these guys that I found on Pinterest. Just like cool looking dudes that I decided to draw. And I like doing male portraits because they tend to have a lot of character in their face and they don't get pissed off at you when you show the character in their face. Here's a funny little drawing I did of me and my boyfriend. I did a little caricature of him for his birthday one year. My first and only caricature, except for just kind of a joke caricature that I did of some cheerleader girl in high school. But anyway, my special interests are kind of scattered throughout my house, and like since I live alone, I get to pick out how I want to live and decorate how I want to decorate. And yeah, I do paint stuff and then get attached to it and want to keep it. So it's, it's probably going to go on my walls somewhere or, be stacked up like the desert paintings over there. I don't know if maybe I missed those. Yeah, there's a stack of some deserty landscape paintings that I started and haven't finished. I'm really bad about doing that. I'll start them and I'll kind of just put them aside to finish later. And eventually, most of them get finished. But yeah. Oh, and here, be right back. So I painted my version of how I feel when I have sensory overload. And this is how I feel with sensory overload. And yeah, as you can see, most of my paintings are realism. That's as real as it feels to me. That's a pretty accurate representation of what I feel when I'm experiencing sensory overload. And so yeah, those are my special interests in my paintings. And I'm reading The Dragon Reborn still right now, and I'd love to talk about the Wheel of Time stuff. But I'm trying. I've made my brother start watching it, or he watched it and watched the first series or whatever. And I was going through each episode with him, telling him how it was different from the book, which he probably found annoying. But yeah, anyway. Yeah, so if anyone shares any of my special interests or just wants to share their own special interests, please do. I need someone to talk to about this stuff or I'm gonna explode. Have a good weekend.